Alrighty. Hello. Am I in some noises here? Hold on. Is there an echo for you guys? Nope. Okay. There's a bit of an echo on my end, so I just want to make sure. Alrighty. Hello and welcome to our webinar all about women in tech. I'm Holly with Be My App and I'll be your moderator for today. I encourage you to interact and ask questions as we go. So please utilize the chat in the Q&A section to drop your comments and questions for our speakers. And we will address them throughout and at the end as we have time. Let me introduce our speakers for today. We have Dr. Grace Metri, the Developer Relations Manager at NVIDIA. She has also worked in artificial intelligence, simulations, IoT and robotics, as well as a AWS community builder. Welcome, Grace, Dr. Grace. Next up, we have IBM's very own Chief Penguin of Student Entrepreneur Experiences, Dr. Melissa Sassi. Dr. Sassi is also the global head of IBM HyperProtect Accelerator. She is a tech startup change maker, an accelerator advisor, a digital inclusion advocate, a youth empowerment enabler, and the founder and CEO, which hopefully we'll hear more about a little later. From Infosys, we have Kisha Gupta, I apologize, the Director of Marketing and Global Head of Academic Relations. Thanks for joining us, Kisha. And last but certainly not least, we have Lebogang Madise, the Azure Developer Audience Product Marketing Manager with the HQ team at Microsoft, where she leads developer relations across top strategic communities in Africa. Let's pull this down so we can get a better view of all of us here. Alrighty. Let me begin by saying I feel honored to moderate this roundtable with such accomplished women in tech, so thank you all for joining us. I'm going to ask each of you to tell us in your own words a little bit about how you found your field of interest and your journey to where you are now. Starting with Dr. Grace Metri, you have graciously taken Be My App with you from your former roles at Intel and ARM, and so we'd love to hear more about your experiences leading projects like the ones that you've done with us, as well as your journey to where you are now with NVIDIA.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity for inviting me to be part of this panel. I first want to start, we talk about women in tech and how do women in tech get into it. And I had a bit of I did not know what I wanted to do when I was in high school. As a matter of fact, I hated computers. I hated everything that had to do with tech. And when we had like the parent-teacher conference at the school, my computer teacher told my mom, I'll do anything, but nothing that is related to computers. Fast forward a couple years later, I had a job where, I was an administrative assistant and I just needed to know something about computers. And since I didn't pay attention when I was in high school, I had to take a class in college. And this is when, I took an intro computer class. And during that class, there were some problem solving questions and they were supposed to be the hard questions. And whenever the professor asked them, I was like the first one to answer those questions. And this is when he took the time to come to me. It's like, hey, Grace, I think you should take a programming course with me next year. And at the beginning, I was like, me, computers? No, that's not for me. But I figured, what, the timing worked out for me. Let me just try it out. And that was the best thing I've done because I took that programming course and I love art, but I cannot draw anything to save my life. I'm not an artist at all. I appreciate art, but that's it. So long story short, when I took that first programming course, I felt that I was an artist. I can create something myself. I can be creative on how I'm creating it. And that's how I fell in love with computer science. I changed my major. So this is kind of the beginning. I just want to say that you don't necessarily know what you like from the beginning, but this was my journey. And having a professor who took the time to tell me that I could be good at it and I should just try it out was a game changer. And then fast forward many years later, I continued on my journey. I earned my PhD. I was working at Intel. I was loving my job. And then I graduated with my PhD. And then that's when I figured, let me try something new. There was an opportunity as a tech analyst for university programs. I thought that was great. This is a way for me to get into, down the line and to become a professor. Let me do that. So then I joined, and this is on my first day. There was a reorg, and there was a shuffle, and my role changed. And my new role was a IoT community evangelist. At the beginning, as a student, I've never been to a hackathon. I didn't know anything about that. I've never been part of a competition. And I got the job. It's like, oh my God, I have a PhD, and I'm gonna go be a tech computer tech, in just the labs and the hackathons. I'm not sure that's for me. But I kept an open mind, and I did my first event. And oh my God, being part of a community and attending those hackathons, literally changed my life. I became super, super passionate about it. All the misconceptions and myths you think about hackathons and hackers, and what was completely false. It was, at the beginning, I thought it was all about the competition and people just coding and they don't care about each other and they're just competing. And but the reality is, it was not like that. It was people are just there to learn together and to work together and to solve problems and just think outside of the box. And you think it's just about middle-aged men, but it was you see kids, you see a mom and dad sometimes together with their kids hacking, or so I just fell in love with it, and then the rest was history. Since then, during my role at Intel, I've participated and supported developer communities and took that on at ARM as a developer program manager, and right now at NVIDIA. This was a long answer.
Thank you. That was great, Metri. I remember my first hackathon too, and I had a very similar experience. So, yeah, I appreciate that. Dr. Melissa Sassi, you have a slew of titles. Can you share with us your journey and involvement with us?
Yeah, sure. So I actually have a business background, and most people, get a bit surprised because I'll talk about my IBM role in a second in my journey. But one of the reasons people get surprised that I have a business background is I am the CEO and founder of a youth-led nonprofit based out of Tunis, Tunisia, and I'll talk about my connection to the continent in a second. Hence my Twitter handle, Mentor Africa. There's a story, I promise. But yeah, I have this youth-led nonprofit called Mentor Nations, and we've taught tens of thousands of young people to code in 12 countries. And a lot of people think, well, wait a second, you run this big coding program and it's funded by the US Department of State, and you've gotten funding from Google and HP and SAP, and you've been nominated for these different awards through the UN. What the heck do you mean you don't code? And I think there are many different types of people working in tech. And I think that everyone should understand the introductory building blocks of computer science or machine learning or artificial intelligence or data science. Regardless of what field you are in or where you want to go in your life, you should understand kind of what is computer science, what is coding, what is this stuff, even if you're not rolling up your sleeves day to day and building applications or building e-commerce solutions or whatever. Because I think ultimately it takes an army to look at, what kind of tech is required to solve business problems or to solve problems in general. Naturally, we shouldn't be creating tech for the sake of tech, but creating it to solve, specific challenges or, to bring joy or meet audience needs, whatever that may be. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, all of us are going to be, engineers. That said, I'll talk a little bit about my journey into tech. My children, grew up in North Africa, in Tunisia, and my daughter was telling me one day, she's like, mommy, I'm learning Microsoft. That was her accent. And I was working at Microsoft at the time. And what do you mean you're learning Microsoft? And I realized that she was learning Word in her classroom. This is like maybe 7 years ago, something like that, 5 years ago. And I realized that in her classroom in Menzel Bourguiba, Tunisia, which is about 45 minutes outside of Tunis, the capital of the country. For those of you who are not familiar with Tunis or Tunisia, sandwiched in between Algeria and Libya, spark of the Arab Spring. It's really what brought about many of the changes that we see, to this day, across North Africa and in the Middle East. And I realized that in her classroom, she was sharing one device, one laptop with 30, 40 other kids. And we've seen many of us see this day in and day out. This is not just about, hey, small village in North Africa. It happens even in the most developed countries around the world. And, I wasn't on this mission to like change the world or, create this revolution or this, nonprofit or anything like that. It was just, hey, my kid needed some tech in her classroom. And I thought, what can I do? How can I help, them get the tools and skills that they need to be part of the future, be prepared for the future of work, be part of the digital economy. And that was kind of my thought. And I ran around thinking, hey, I work at Microsoft, maybe I can get some computers. And, fast forward a year or two, and a hackathon, by the way, where I ended up sending, in collaboration with Microsoft and HP, 400 computers to 20 schools across the country. And it inspired me to think about, it's not just about a device, it's not just about access to the internet, but it's about having the necessary skills and mentors and, role models to make meaningful use of the internet. And so I started, collaborating with some engineering students to teach some young people to code. And I didn't do any of it. I was just kind of coordinating it all. And I realized that, wait a second, 50% of the world lacks access to the internet. And, exponentially higher numbers of people lack even the basic digital skills. What can I do about that? And it, kind of helped me think about, hey, wait a second, I've got a role, and I've got like this thing that also makes me feel good, that I'm making a difference and I'm driving change in the world. And hey, this is my place, and this is my life's work and what I was meant to do. And I found that it woke me up in the morning to the point where I enjoyed going to work. It wasn't just like I was in a job making my salary to to live. I was working on something that actually improved people's lives and made their lives better. So I switched my career and started building wireless networks around the world, bringing digital skills to the newly connected at Microsoft, and ended up leaving Microsoft for a really cool opportunity at IBM about 3 years ago. And I currently head up a startup accelerator where we've got 100 startups in our portfolio. And I also work on our student experience team, where I bring digital skills to young people and students of all ages, all across the planet. So that's a bit about my journey. And similar to Dr. Grace, I didn't go into too much detail. I'm super passionate about all of this stuff. So sometimes you just have to bang me over the head and tell me to shut up and move on to the next person. So thank you, Holly.
No, that's great. Thank you, Dr. Sassi. We love your passion and your enthusiasm. It's always welcomed. But now let's jump to another part of the globe. Let's hear from Krista. Can you share your story with us?
I'm assuming you meant Kisha.
Oh, yes, Kisha. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. I was looking at Lebo's spelling. Is there a K somewhere in there? And there wasn't.
Yeah,
So
I
hence the
don't know.
assumption that that's me.
Goodness.
All
Thank you.
right, no worries. No, thanks, Holly. Well, I haven't had a very planned journey into tech. I guess I was just trying to find my calling. I loved talking. That's something I knew all my life. I want to be in a profession which allows me to talk. Uh, that could be so many professions. And then as I started on it, I realized I want to talk to people who have new ideas, who can enrich me with their conversations. So that happened. And then I landed with my first job. It was in a different sector altogether, wherein I started meeting with more academics. So I started meeting more professors. I met Professor Stephen Hawking in Cambridge. I met a lot of professors who were doing some incredible stuff. For example, I met Kip Thorne and Caltech. So these people basically inspired me to think of tech as the place where new ideas are emerging at a rate unprecedented. And that's where the most meaningful conversations can probably have impact on me. So it was kind of, I was swifting in that direction with those conversations. And then I met one day Mr. N.R. Narayanamurthy, who's the founder of Infosys. According to Time magazine, he's one of the greatest entrepreneurs of all times. And he founded Infosys from scratch. So yeah, I met him and I returned just insanely inspired to join Infosys. And that's where my tech journey of sorts began. Today, what I do, I help students around the planet, so I can relate to what Melissa just spoke about helping students with digital skills around the planet. I lead internships for the company, and every day is a delight to meet students from all different parts of the world, to bring them closer to their journeys in tech, and then enriching each other with those conversations. So, definitely not planned, happened over a period of time.
That is awesome. Thank you, Kisha. And I think we're probably going to have that's going to be a trend. All of you are going to be having very similar instances or things that we share in common. Now let's hear from Levo.
Thank you, Holly. So, first of all, thank you for inviting me to join the panel. I look up to the fellow panelists over here, and I'm like, I hope I can keep a straight face without owing and gagging over them. So my journey is a little bit similar, but I I feel like I'm still on the journey, you know. So I'm looking at Dr. Metri, Dr. Sassi, and I'm like, I want to be called Dr. Somebody one day, you know. So I started out as a computer science student. I and it was tough. I don't want to lie. Like I ended up dropping out and then dropping in again so I can finish. But what really changed the course of my life is even before leaving the university, while I was there at the University of Pretoria, they had a program where during the school holidays you could volunteer to teach people how to code. And they were targeting remote areas in across South Africa. And I volunteered to do that because I learned to write my first line of code in university, and I thought that was pretty late, you know. I went to what I consider a good school, but it was an all girls school, so they didn't even offer technical subjects like coding. You know, I remember I did go to my computer teacher at the time, and I said, I want to be a computer engineer. One of the things I need to do is to know how to code. Can you introduce that instead of us just doing the normal office suit subjects? And she literally told me, oh no, coding is hard. It's not for you. I'm like, what? So, I and looking back, I'm like, actually, we had the facilities. You know, it was just a matter of possibly having a trainer, you know. So I went into varsity was just a dictionary definition of what programming is, and I said to myself, you know, let's go do it. And I wouldn't give up. I struggled. I don't want to lie, I did struggle, but I loved it nonetheless. And I think what really steered my career is being involved in some of the student clubs on campus. So I was part of the IEEE student chapter, and that gave us access to a whole lot of industry people. And one day Microsoft came and they had what they called Windows Phone Dev Tools at the time. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. I saw it as an opportunity, you know, for creating something that doesn't sit on like a command prompt screen, you know, and to be able to show my family what it is I'm passionate about and doing, because to them, all they see is someone who's always in front of the computer, but they didn't get what I was doing. So the Windows Phone era was probably one of the biggest highlights of my career. I had a lot of apps in the store. One of the top performing ones, landed me an award with the Nokia team. They gave me a developer champion award. And also with Microsoft, I believe they invested in me very early in career. They gave me an opportunity where I got to intern at the Johannesburg offices building Windows Phone apps. It started off as vacation work. And then when I couldn't afford to stay in school anymore because there was no line of sight of me finishing, I asked if I could join any program that they would offer students, and they got me on a 1 year program where I learned a lot around software development. Some of the concepts that I was struggling with in varsity, within the first 2 weeks, I was able to understand. I think and it dawned on me that sometimes it's literally around delivery, of the content. So so I often tell people that volunteering is my superpower because I believe it's what's contributed to the success of my career. And it's one thing that I've always just tried to make sure that people don't go through the same struggles as me. So if they get introduced earlier into the concepts, then let's do that. And so I really identified with what Dr. Metri said around communities. I believe those are like at the heart of everything today, So whether you're in university or you are in industry or at a boot camp, if you join a developer community, it could shape the course of your life. The people you meet there, the things that you learn, they could change your life forever. So with me, I would say it's the people. I've got a lot of people, which I don't even want to mention by name because I might leave others out. I think they really helped me by encouraging me and 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 affirming me and saying, you do have a place in tech, So making sure that I concentrate on my strengths and I never stop learning, So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
That is awesome. Thank you all for sharing. As a woman who's kind of dabbling in tech myself, I always find connecting with other women in the industry and also hearing about, your obstacles that you've overcome to be super inspiring. Um, so something that I want to get into, Dr. Metri, you made a great point talking earlier about how women aren't necessarily underrepresented. We just aren't super visible. Can you dive into that a little more?
I wouldn't say we're not underrepresented. We are. However, we are, and not necessarily not visible, but I think we need to make a conscious decision about, finding women and letting them participate. And I'll give you a simple example. We do, through the course of my career, I've done maybe more than 100 developer events, a lot more than that. I used to do like one almost every week. And at the beginning, we used to see that, hey, there's, the percentage of men versus women was really different. You have about 90% men, and then you have just 10% women. But what I found is if you're doing more of a targeted approach to find women to do the participation, and you really are making a conscious decision to reach them, then that percentage is much closer to each other than it was before. And then the other thing is, through the activities, sometimes making conscious decision of, I've been guilty sometimes of putting together conferences where, you're putting all your, let's say, your keynotes, and you think about the first people and then you end up with 6 men on a panel of 6 people, and then just being aware sometimes of that, like taking a look, okay, am I really being diverse in my approach about recruiting people for this event? And then remedying that is key.
Yes, definitely. And I think that can kind of help us transition a little more. Dr. Sassi, one of the questions that seems to always come up is around recruitment. How do you think we can expand our field of recruitment to more women in tech?
I think that one of the things that, I often, do, at least myself, is, I kind of look at some of the language that we use in our job descriptions. That's kind of one of the things. And, sometimes, we do a quick copy paste and we, work from something that was, there before. And, sometimes we, forget that there are certain, words or phrases or things that might not be as, inviting for certain, individuals or certain groups. And I think there is a lot of research that, I think many of us have seen that, when we talk about what are the requirements of the job or what are the preferences of the job, women might, and obviously, you can't necessarily put, everybody into a box, so I think we need to be careful by saying, well, women do this and men do this, and this group of people, they do that, but I think it, generally speaking, it is common for, women to look at a job description and say, oh, well, I don't meet all of these things, so I'm not gonna apply. We kind of self-select out. And I know I've done that before, without realizing that I was doing it. Because sometimes, you don't realize like how important is this, and this. And I think sometimes, at least research suggests that, men on average will look at a job description, and even if, they don't meet, this, and this, they will have a higher tendency to apply anyway. So I think part of that is, recognizing that, hey, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and go after this thing anyway. Naturally, we shouldn't be going after, things that we're not, in reality qualified to do. I'm not saying that. You obviously still have to have the right, skills and experiences to go after things. But, I think it's language. I think it's making sure that, as an applicant, we're looking and saying, you know what, no, I can do that job. I'm going to go after this, thing. I think we also, have, and I don't think this is something that is like gender specific, but we all need to do a better job of self-promotion and making sure that we don't, feel scared about saying, you know what, I achieved this thing. I did this thing. I'm going to talk about this thing. And that doesn't make me arrogant. It doesn't make me a jerk. It doesn't make me, full of myself, and I think, kind of one example of that is, Grace and I putting doctor before our names here. How often is it that sometimes before I'm like, oh, did I put that? Does that make me? No, I achieved that thing. I worked hard to get that thing, so I'm going to talk about that thing. And I always talk with, young students, especially, and it's not just young students, it's really everyone, is what is your personal brand? How do you control your own narrative? When it comes to how others see you and talk about you when you're not in the room. So that when, hiring manager A, B, and C have a role open, they think about you. It's not about you going after that role and applying for that role. It's that hiring manager remembering that, wait a second, that person has this great, podcast or this great content that they put out. So you actively have to nurture your, your career. And maybe, maybe there is only, 28, 29, 30%, women in tech. We know that. We've seen that from, I think, Anita Board, figures. So we do need to be doing more to make sure that we are seen and heard and speaking up. But our male allies also need to be, supportive in terms of making sure that, they are bringing us to the table in the right way. And I don't feel like, for example, in my role, like I need some dude to bring me to the table. I'm going to make sure that I'm at the table that I need to be at. I'm going to speak up and I'm going to say what I need to say in the right kind of way. But I think it takes time to get to that point. Earlier on in my career, there were times where I get walked all over, or I didn't have a voice. I didn't have the confidence to be able to say, no, wait a second. I'm just as smart as you. My skills may be different than yours, but know I belong, know I'm not an imposter. And I think a lot of that is putting that, that inner bully that you have inside of you aside, and saying, no, I do belong. And yes, I am going to be here. And having a voice doesn't mean I'm this or I'm that. No, I am smart enough. So I don't know if I rambled on too much, but that's a whole lot of stuff that I always have in my head. And I think it goes to, what can men do? What can women do? What can we do as candidates, and what can hiring managers do to make sure that we're bringing about a diverse and inclusive workforce? I'll say one more thing and then I'll shut up. I like to talk. And that's, we know that having a more diverse and inclusive workforce drives business results. It's a fact. All right. That's one thing. I think the other thing is, it's not just tech that has its challenges when it comes to having, women and girls at the table. It's not just a tech thing. And so we shouldn't just assume like, oh, it's only happening in tech. It's not the case. If you look at financial services and the C-suite, you look at the C-suite of, big business all over the world. You look at, boards. There are companies like Goldman or BlackRock that are now saying, you know what, I'm not going to invest in your company unless you have, female representation on the board. Because again, it makes business sense. If you're not reflective of your audience in your team, you're not going to ultimately build products, services, and solutions that align to your audience wants, pains points, frustrations, aspirations, whatever. Because whether I like it or not, I'm not a man. I can't think like a man. I may not be, blind or from South Africa or from an indigenous community. We need diverse and inclusive teams to make sure we're creating products and services that are aligned to our audience. So, all right, I'm stepping down from my soapbox.
No, that was great. And I think your point on, the imposter syndrome kind of leads us into retainment and, how we make sure that we're retaining our strong women in tech if they have this sense of, do I belong? Am I actually supposed to be at the table? And so I would love to hear about this topic a little more, starting with Kisha. And I would love all of you to, anytime you want to jump in or you have a comment to add, please do.
I don't know what else I can add to what Grace and Melissa have already spoken about, because they were on point. It's not about just the lack of women at workplace. It's about how shy we feel when we are accomplished, how inadequate we think it is to speak in volumes about the accomplishments that we have. And that is something we need to overcome. That is something we absolutely have to be all out, inspiring other people, telling other people this I have done. It's not arrogant. It's not arrogant at all, according to me. A lot of people do it of other genders, and it's totally fine if you do it as a woman. So I think they've covered the ground pretty much there. I just remember this one instance specifically where there's this colleague of mine, and she got this amazing award of Forbes 30 under 30. And she should go all out celebrating and stuff. And she was waiting for her manager to send an email to the leadership that, hey, I got this award and people should know about it. And the manager was busy somewhere, couldn't send it for 2-3 days. And I was like, you send it. It's your award. You don't have to wait for somebody else to send it on your behalf. A very small, tiny thing, a tiny expression of what it takes. Go talk about it. It's an achievement. It's not easy. It's not a small thing. So go talk about it. Tell about it to everyone you can. And yeah, be humble, of course, in telling it, but you don't have to wait for some boss or somebody to send it out for you.
I love that. I really love that, Kisha. I was speaking to an amazing young woman who is based out of, I think she's from Bangalore, and she's taking on her first internship. And she reached out to me to say, I'm moving. My mom is going to come with me for X number of months. My parent, I come from a village where, you just don't move out of your house at this age. And, this is just not kind of aligned to what my family typically has done. So my mom's moving with me. And how do I make sure that I get the most out of, like my experience? I'm a little scared, it's my first thing. And I was telling her the concept around like, nobody's going to like usher you through your career. you may have mentors like me who like care about your development, but ultimately, like, you're the one who's going to have to think about, what do I want people to know about me? How do I make sure they know? And how do I stand up for my own career? What are my goals? Where do I want to go? Because most of the time, we've all been there and had crappy managers, or worked for a crappy company, or had a crappy job, or a terrible project. And, you got to navigate through that and figure out, okay, is this what I want to do? Am I getting the experiences and the learning opportunities from the leaders, from leaders I respect, and if not, like, okay, you've got to manage your career and your learning opportunities, and you got to move on to the next thing, because nobody's going to usher you through it. Some people are super lucky and, have, someone who believes in them and throws them, a $30 million check to go and start up their own startup. But most of us don't, have that opportunity. I think less than 3% of venture capital funds in the US go to female founders. This is also, this is a challenge. Diversity and inclusion is a challenge, and we need to do more to, kind of speak out and go after what's in front of us.
Absolutely.
Unapologetically so.
Yeah.
Lebo, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, so I wanted to just share the other side of what Kisha mentioned around her colleague who won the 30 under 30 award. I think sometimes, when you're part of a big organization, you don't know what the protocol is. I mean, the fact that she got that award specifically, just goes to show that she's phenomenally amazing, doing a lot of work outside of her normal job, but no one teaches you the rules of the game in the job. So I
And
wanted to
it
comment
changes
on,
too, right? Like, sometimes
yeah,
you work in a company where, like, it's like different. Like, you work here and you can do that. You work over here and, oh wow, look what she did. Sorry, I
yeah,
didn't mean to interrupt you, but it was something I was just thinking about.
yeah. And sometimes it's not even about the company, it's about the team, because you might be in the same company, but a different team and different rules might apply. So I think um, it's not just about maybe getting more women in roles or on the table, but also supporting them further on their journey, So because how else can they then grow? I mean, you don't know what the rules of the game are. So I think in some instances, I've been fortunate to have some people in the organization that I work for who would ask me questions or say, hey, why don't you share this? Or even offer to share it on my behalf, or talk me through situations to say if it was them, this is how they would approach it or go about it. But I really feel like even the diversity and inclusion topic, I mean, it's quite a hot one right now with a lot of organizations. They're doing a lot of investments, but I believe DNI in practice is more than getting diverse people employed. It's really about. I think there's this saying. Someone shared it in our team that you know inviting someone to the party is only like one step of it. It's not the full thing. So you can't say, hey, this is such a diverse and inclusive party simply because it's got diverse people. Them having the freedom to go on the dance floor, that's being included. So diversity is, I think, it's an easier metric, but inclusion is something that's very hard, and it takes everybody owning it personally to say, you know what, I want to make sure that this person feels included. It could be a cultural thing or a race thing or a gender thing. So can I bring my whole self to the workplace without feeling somehow. And one of the trainings I also attended is around covering, like how much of yourself are you actually putting away so that you can feel accepted or that you can fit into a team. So I think to be successful today as a woman in tech actually has a lot happening. It's more than working twice as hard or three times as hard. It's really around navigating the social dynamics, because I can't remember if it was Dr. Metri or Sassi that said, networking, meeting people, needing a sponsor, that's also quite important. Who will speak for you if they don't know you that well, if they haven't connected with you beyond you achieving on the work front.
I'm gonna jump in here. I think that's completely on point. From my end, I worked really hard for my PhD. As a matter of fact, I did my grad school while I was a single mom to a toddler, so that took a lot more efforts while I was doing full time working. But for the first 4 or 5 years, I had multiple different roles, and I had business cards, and I've done all these events, but I never included my titles on my business cards, and I never included that in my signature. And it wasn't until I think when I joined ARM, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, is when I started, after 5 or 6 years from graduating, that I started using my title and feeling, proud. It's okay to write it down. I earned it. I worked hard for it, and I should just put it there.
Yeah.
I feel that I feel like sometimes, I don't know, when I like my title, for example, I feel like, oh, do they think I'm too academic? Do they think that I'm, like I'm gonna be, kind of this stereotypical academic person that, is more theoretical in nature than practical. And, does it mean I'm not going to be able to fit into this environment? Am I going to select myself out of something because somebody's going to have this preconceived notion of, me being someone who's like pontificating over, this theory or that theory, and, my resume is like 10 pages long or something like that.
Yeah, and someone made a good point. They just commented, to paraphrase what I just heard, don't apologize for your position you hold, you earned it. It's absolutely true for all
I
of
think that's so true. We have to be unapologetically ourselves. I've been in a situation where, I looked and I'm like, I don't fit in with you guys, you girls, you people. I don't. Just the way of working, it doesn't resonate with me, and I don't like working with you. And I think sometimes you're not going to fit in with everyone. And I think ultimately, no matter who you are, you have to find that right team, that right mentor, that right boss, that right company. And, sometimes like the company may be awesome and, the team just sucks for whatever reason. Or you might find like a job that's super awesome in one part of the company and is just dreadful in the other. Like it looks amazing on paper. And then you get in, you're like, ooh, this is not what I signed up for. But I think it's super important that we bring our whole selves. I remember when I was at Microsoft, I did this like strengths finder thing, and it looked at, kind of what are your strengths? Who do you work well together, with what kind of people, and look at like the kind of things you value and that sort of thing. And one of the elements of this like model looked at, how do you bring yourself, who are you at work? And then who are you in your personal life? And the people who I kind of didn't really get on as well with at work were people who were massively different when you looked at how they were at work versus their personal lives. Like I'm one of those kind of like what you see is what you get. You kind of either love me or you don't. I don't know if there's an in between. And I realized that I could spot like someone who, wasn't authentic, someone who wasn't transparent, someone who, didn't bring their whole selves. Like I could see it. And I always was like wary of that kind of individual. And over time, I've kind of gotten to know like certain things about me to make sure that I do work better with others. I recognize, certain, personality traits or certain things that make people different, so that I'm not like automatically saying, I like you, I don't like you, you're not as authentic, so and really trying to be like a better team, a better team player, and more cognizant of not only what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, and how do I just have better cohesion with others.
And I think what kind of sparked something in my head is when Lebo brought up, and you had spoke to it as well, Dr. Sassi, about having the team environment and not necessarily knowing the protocols, or having a team that necessarily supports you being your own advocate. I think that you all have dealt with or been in a team or had a manager that maybe didn't give you that open, ability to do that. And so, but I think that there's always, maybe not always, but I would hope there's always opportunities to change that. And I would love to hear if you guys have any ideas or thoughts on how you can change that culture of your team or have those open conversations to allow for that change to happen.
I had a situation where I had I didn't get on with the boss. Thankfully, I get on with my boss now. I love her. She's awesome. But in my career, I had a situation where we just didn't see eye to eye. And I wasn't able to have that open dialogue. And I didn't have a pathway, to one up the boss, there's certain things where sometimes you have to cut your losses and you're not going to be able to impact, the culture of a team if you've got a leader that is a certain way and, runs the team in a certain way. Obviously, I think there are things you can do to like influence change. And I'm a big, fan of influencing change and managing by influence. But I think we all need to recognize that sometimes there are things we can't change, people we can't change, and our mental health, our well-being, our career growth, our happiness is much more important than trying to drive change in this muckety muck over here if you don't have the support above you.
Kisha, did you have any thoughts on that?
No, I agree. And I guess one more thought that I would bring in, it's a little bit different to what you asked, but something that Melissa spoke about earlier to the last question. You have to leave when you don't fit in. You have to put your foot down and you have to say it would not work. As women, we tend to put up. It's just a trait that we have. We tend to put up with people we do not exactly reconcile with. We tend to put up with people trying to make them understand a certain sense of logic, that no, what I'm saying is logical. So one day this person will come around and will understand why I'm doing this and how this needs to be done. It wouldn't happen. So you need to know when to stop fighting that battle and need to move on. The faster you move on, the more opportunities you would see. So I completely agree with that part of it. One has to find the culture that they fit in. They have to feel valued. They have to feel respected. It's an exchange that is extremely important for work life. And yes, people need to know when to move on, man or woman. Both need to do it, especially women, because we tend to stick on for longer periods. If you pick up any study and see the number of companies a woman works with in a career versus the number of companies men change, you will find starking evidence for this.
Right.
So I'd like to add to say that sometimes with managers, it's about them creating a safe space for the team so that the team feels like a team and not that they are competitors within the team themselves, So one analogy my current manager gave us at the beginning of the FY was, it was during the Euro 2020 World Cup. So I'm a soccer fan. I completely identified with this analogy, but for persons who might not know much about soccer, he just gave examples about two teams. I won't use the country names. I'll just say Team A and Team B. In Team A, there are about 5 individuals that are top high scorers as part of the overall league. However, in Team B, there's one star player that's doing all the shooting, like all the goals, And he said to us that he'd rather have, Team A, where everybody in the team is a star, So if you're a defender, win at that. If your role is to, let's say, assist, like a striker, like someone that scores goals, do that very well. Be the top performer in the assisting. And that for me said, this is the guy you want as your manager, he's a leader. He wants everybody to win, meaning he will create opportunities for everyone in the team to be their best selves so that as a whole team we can win. Because at the end of the day, if we win as a team, he also looks good, you know And if individually we win, it forms part of that Maslow hierarchy of needs. You feel fulfilled, and if you are feeling fulfilled personally, you'd want to do better, perform better. You become happier. So so I would say culture is really influenced by people realizing that you winning is also not just about you, but the whole team, And that way, if they don't take an individual's winnings as something that, oh my gosh, I need to beat Lebo next time, then then it becomes a healthy environment for everyone to thrive. And then even the manager themselves, they don't feel threatened by any of the team members. They would actually create even more opportunities for them to do well, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you all are leaders within your industries, and so I would love to hear more about any innovative methods that you have used for team building or things that you've leveraged to scale, um, that is targeted more towards this inclusiveness. If we want to start with Grace.
Sure. I think the key here is understanding that each one of us, we are individuals before we're workers, right? You have your own personalities, you have your own ways of doing things. Each one of us has different set of skills that is unique to us. So if we as a team recognize that, we all have our strengths, Dr. Sassi just talked about how the strengths finder and how each one of us have a strength. Figure out how the strength of each one of us can make the team a stronger team, then we'll be much more effective working together. And I think that is key.
Right. And do you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, do you find that you are helping team members identify those strengths? Like if, I think I often go back to that imposter syndrome. So if someone is feeling like they just they can't recognize their skills and their talents, are you often helping women within your team or within your company identify those skills and those things that make them a part of the team?
Absolutely. Being able to have these conversations, these frank conversations, being vulnerable where you are, and not being scared to share, your own weaknesses and your own insecurities, because we all have them. We didn't get here by mistake, and we didn't know how to do this since we were born. We just had to learn them through the journey. Being open about sharing that journey with others, would make them feel that there's a safe space for them to share also their experiences, their thoughts, their feelings. And by doing so, you can clear up so much from the misunderstanding, sometimes from the judgment that you might have, whether you like it or not. Sometimes they happen, and just having that frank conversation, allows you to clear that and be able to create a more cohesive workspace.
Right.
And we're not alone, right? We're not alone in our feelings.
Yeah, exactly. Kisha, do you have anything that you would like to add to that?
Well, I guess if I may add, I would love to add three qualities to any woman at workplace. First and foremost, please be fearless. Nothing bad is going to come out of this. At best, you can lose your job if you have a bad boss or if you don't feel you fit in. And that's great. If you lose it, you will have a reason to move on. So please be fearless in whatever you do. We all have debts. We all have reasons to care for our jobs. But at the same time, we cannot care for it beyond that little point of feeling fearful. So please be fearless in things that you do. Second, your team is super important. If you're managing your team, then it's even more important that you foster the culture of diversity in that team. So please foster it. The more we foster, that ripple effect keeps going on. That's the second bit. And the third bit is please have that voice in you that speaks for you, like we discussed in the beginning of this call. So be fearless, foster diversity and inclusivity in your team. Be the role model for it, for other people to follow. And please never lose your voice. It's just so important to retain your voice. I guess those are just three thoughts that come into my mind. I'm not sure if they targetedly answer your question, but those are three things I really wanted to leave the audience with.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And we're kind of wrapping up here. We have about 5 minutes left. So let's get to some of the questions in the chat here, if you guys don't mind. We have a question about, let's see here. We have lots. Let's see which is. Let's see if we want to have maybe Dr. Sassi or Kisha speak to this, or actually any of you could speak to this. Have you used hackathons to recruit tech?
All right.
Oh,
so
yeah, all the time.
go ahead, Kisha. I can answer after you.
I was just saying all the time, hackathons is such a great place because it doesn't matter what degree you come with, what school you come from, what university you come with, what you have done in the past. All that matters in that hackathon is how creative, how innovative, and how quick you are to make a solution or get to problem finding, get to knowing what to crack. It's just a great tool in 48 hours or 24 hours to know, okay, that's the person I need to hire.
Yeah.
So, yeah, totally.
And specifically hackathons to recruit women.
Oh, yeah, women, men, everyone.
I agree with that, and I think that I actually I mentioned that I'm not an engineer, and I participated in my first hackathon, and again as a non-engineer, as a somebody who couldn't code their way out of a cardboard box. I participated in a Microsoft hackathon. It was an employee hackathon. And I hacked, instead of like trying to create like an app or some kind of technical solution, I looked at the device giving policies and procedures at the company. And I created a team, and it grew to about 50 some odd people from all over the world. We won first place in the Inspired Me category worldwide out of 4,000 teams. And I got a chance. If you look at my Twitter, kind of back cover photo or whatever it is, that's me pitching to Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. I am a hidden figure. At that time, I had no personal brand. I was kind of scared to talk about my project and what I was working on. But in reality, I revolutionized the device giving policies and procedures at Microsoft worldwide. Anytime a device is given to an NGO or nonprofit around the world, it came from my idea. My idea was stolen from someone else because I did not advocate for myself. Why do I say that? It's important for us to think about how do we make sure we have a voice when we're participating in a hackathon, a coding camp, a competition, a pitch, whatever. But so that's one comment. Going back to the actual question, you know what? I use it all the time for getting new ideas, for engaging my kind of core audience in my job, so students and entrepreneurs, to think about how do we solve big, wicked challenges in the world, and how can like IBM Tech help with that. I got to know my intern, Lala, who broke a glass ceiling recently. And we helped her to do that. She is now 17. She was 16, and we recruited her to join our team. The first minor, if I'm not mistaken, so under 18, to join us from the UK. And she's a woman in tech, and I consider her to be my mentor. So mentors can come from all over the place. It doesn't need to be someone older than you, more experienced than you, with a bigger job title. Experience can come from anywhere and everywhere. And hackathons are a great place to foster talent, to identify talent, to help you think more creatively, to hone in on your skills, whether you're a student, a professional, whatever you are, whoever you are, wherever you are.
Yeah, I got the opportunity to meet Lala at the IBM Z Day conference that we did in September. She's awesome, Melissa. And if anyone has the opportunity, I would encourage you to go listen to her speak. She's brilliant. She does not sound like she's 17 years old. She's
amazing. I nominated her for a Princess Diana Award,
right.
And she actually, she won. she won. So she's just an amazing woman. I'll see if I can get her Twitter handle real quick for anyone who wants to follow her.
That'd be awesome. And I just have one last question that we'll quickly squeeze in. Someone says, for someone who wants to enter the tech industry, what would you recommend as useful tools? And I think you all would agree a hackathon is a great way to enter the industry if anyone wants to speak to that or have any other tools.
Yeah, so that's how I landed my first internship, through a hackathon. I think what it does is it shows whoever is looking to hire, or even if they're not looking to hire, they might even decide right there and then that they need to hire you because they can see what you can do. You know, it reveals who you are in the sense that you are able to show people that you're a team player, you're a creative problem solver, you can work well under pressure, all the things that they normally ask in like a job spec that you don't know how to prove. A hackathon is one way of doing it. And another thing I would say, online tools. I know there are a lot of courses flying around, and I can tell you now, irrespective of what you want to learn, there's always an equally good resource that's available for free. So you don't have to always pay for learning content, you know. So I would really advocate for people to concentrate on projects, go for courses that actually help you build stuff so that you have something at the end as opposed to a certificate. I believe these days certificates don't count for much. Being able to show what you can do is what would carry a lot of weight. Yeah.
I think that's true. I think we also, kind of need to demonstrate that, write blogs, do videos, take control of your social media, network, attend an event. If you see somebody speak, like you're hearing all of us speak, go to LinkedIn, go to Twitter. Hey, Melissa. Hey, Grace. Hey, Kisha. Hey, Holly. I saw you speak about blah. I really liked what you said about blah. I'd like to stay connected to learn from you. Or I loved what you said about blah. How can we, something like that. Networking is such a powerful tool to advance your learning and your, career, your salary, your job titles, so much more.
Right. Yeah. Joining communities and staying in touch is a great way to do that. Well, thank you so much, all of you. We're a little over time, so I'm going to cut us short unless anyone has any last minute thoughts or words that they were wanting to share.
Just go
line.
for it. Go ahead,
Oh,
Lebo. I was just
yeah.
saying, go for
No,
it, guys. Do whatever you best
yeah,
want to do. Plunge.
yeah. So it's exactly that, Kisha. I wanted to say you lose 100% of the chances you don't take. So go for it.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. And we had someone say, be fearless in the things that you do, foster your inclusiveness in your team, and never lose your voice. And those are all great points. Thank you so much, everyone. And we hope that you enjoyed our Women in Tech Roundtable. And we're looking forward to doing some more and welcoming back our great speakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.